In this video, we'll be focusing on the industry structure, beginning to get inside the industry in our process of industry analysis. As you can see now, we start to focus on the industry factors, conditions that are specific to an industry. And here we want to talk about how industry structure can impact firm behavior and competitive behavior, and specifically the competitive environment within the industry. The most common structure or framework here is called the SCP, or Structure Conduct Performance Framework. And here you can see along this figure that there are different types of competition here, and the types of competition involve the nature and the number of firms. So let's start with the far right. On the far right, you have monopoly. In that case, you have a highly consolidated industry, and that firm has high profitability because you have one firm, only one firm in the industry, and that firm has a unique product because it's the only one. There are entry barriers to protect it, therefore the firm has considerable pricing power. As we start to move left, we start to get in the condition of oligopoly, which is more typical of some of the industries we see, such as maybe media or soft drinks, where you have a few large firms, and those large firms tend to have some pricing power and unique products against the rest of the industry. And that oligopoly works to maintain high entry barriers to protect their position. And in an oligopoly situation, you tend to again have relatively high profits. Next one to the left is monopolistic competition. In this case, what you start to have are you have more firms. So the number of firms is increasing, and therefore the competition is increasing. However, under monopolistic competition, what we're saying is there's still some pricing power. So the nature of product within the industry, there are still some differences across the different marketing segments, and those differentiated products allow for pricing power and different brand images, etc. And with that pricing power comes the ability to control some of the entry barriers and again keep that competition relatively low. So you're going to have competition with a higher number of firms, but it's not pure competition. And then on the far left, you have perfect competition, which in economics basically means there are many, many small firms. The firms are all price takers. In other words, there's no pricing power, and you're facing more of a commodity product. And because there are so many small firms and it's a commodity product, the entry barriers are relatively low. However, under perfect competition, you can see it's a fragmented industry with very low profitability. Now, in reality, and particularly in developed markets and developed economies, most of the industry structure is going to fall in the middle there, either monopolistic competition or oligopoly, where we have a number of firms with some degree of pricing power, and we do have some differentiated product. And what's different between the two forms is really the height of the entry barriers. Now, the industry structure has important implications for the nature of competition across the industry and also some of the behavior of firms. This chart dives a little deeper into the nature of industry structure and its implications for various industry factors, which again is the whole idea of why we look at structure, understand the nature of the industry and factors driving profitability. As you can see, barriers to entry go from none under perfect competition to very high under monopoly. With exit barriers, we also see going from none to high. Exit barriers mean the costs of exiting an industry. Product differentiation, which means the variation in product across different product markets, moves from none under perfect competition to almost zero under monopoly because there's only one firm. But in the middle, there is the possibility for extensive or moderate product differentiation. We would expect firms to have the most profits under monopoly, and then under oligopoly or duopoly situations, again, we'll have some potential for above normal profits. And what this is basically saying is as we move from perfect competition towards monopoly, the level of potential profits goes up. In terms of competition and conduct, under perfect competition, we see price taking. In other words, firms take whatever price is out there based on supply and demand. However, under oligopoly and duopoly, and a duopoly is basically two firms, whereas an oligopoly is a small handful, we see likelihood of tacit collusion, where firms work together tacitly. They're not breaking any laws, but they tend to signal each other and find ways to work together to protect their own profits and to keep out other competitors and protect that limited competition status. In a monopoly, we tend to see an aggressive monopoly where firms will try and protect their power. And then the last row gives you some idea of the nature of industries that might exemplify these situations. So perfect competition you see in more commodity type products. In oligopoly situation, you might see U.S. airlines where it's dominated by a small handful of players. And then the duopoly you see in soft drinks such as Coca-Cola and Pepsi. And monopolies you see utilities. In many cases, particularly in a country like the United States or in Europe, those monopolies tend to be somewhat regulated for different reasons. So for example, in the U.S., utilities are often monopolies just given the nature of infrastructure needed to create utilities for public goods. The goal of understanding industry structure is again to understand what the structure looks like and what are the implications for the competition within that industry and its impact on profits and firm behavior.